Story 1. My husband died 4 months ago from a brain tumor known as glioblastoma. The pain of loss is overwhelming. I would bring him back as he was before the tumor. The last 16 months were very difficult to watch as he deteriorated both mentally and physically. Story 2. My son, who passed away 2 years ago this week at the age of 27. I miss him so much. It was my birthday, and I hadn't heard from him, so I sent him a message that he didn't open. He passed away on my birthday. Story 3. Assuming Jesus was real, it is concerning to see today's conservative Christians condemn him again for promoting socialism. Story 4. My cat died at 14 years old back in September. I had to put him to sleep. I would give anything to have his healthy self back in my life. He was the sweetest little guy. Story 5. Jesus of Nazareth is a historical figure. We can explore his teachings and their impact on religion and society. Story 6. My sister, best friend, and soulmate, Amanda Marie. I just want to hug her and tell her that I love her and that I never hated or judged her for the addiction that took her away. I want to hear her goofy laugh one more time. I want to look at her and take it all in, etching every eyelash and crease of her face into my mind so I won't ever forget it. It's only been 2 years, and it feels like nothing and everything. I miss her so much. Story 7. Theodore Roosevelt. I believe he could effectively address the challenges facing Americans today. He was a dedicated trust buster and nature conservationist. Domestically, he could do a lot of good if he were to regain power. With his reputation, past accomplishments, and the Roosevelt name, he might just succeed. As for foreign policy, it's uncertain. Story 8. Nikola Tesla's genius was ahead of his time, and with today's technology, he could revolutionize the world even further. Story 9. Hitler should be put on trial for his crimes and then confined to a miserable cell until he dies again. While my quick response may not have been entirely logical, I chose a despicable person because we cannot be sure that any individual would actually want to be resurrected. We are unilaterally forcing someone to live again, which seems ethically questionable. Therefore, let's do it to someone we wouldn't mind seeing suffer. Story 10. No, I wouldn't. Just leave them be. I understand that we all miss our loved ones, but there have been many movies that show why this is a bad idea. Story 11. My dad passed away when I was 13 from double pneumonia. I do not have many memories of him since my childhood was already very traumatic, though not because of him. I wish I had more memories with him now as an adult, especially since I am doing much better. I wish he could have met my son. Story 12. Heath Ledger was a great actor, and had he lived, he would have had many more incredible films to his credit. Story 13. My mom. I hoped she would be the only person I could rely on for support. No one seems to care about anyone anymore. It wasn't meant to be this lonely. Story 14. If it comes back to life, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. I wouldn't make someone suffer again. If it were just for a day or two, I would bring back my friend Anthony so he could spend some time with his wife and family. Story 15. Jesus, if he was a real person, prompts serious reflection on what people are doing in the name of religion. People need to know the truth. Is there truth in the stories of the Bible and other religious texts, or are they just stories that have spiraled out of control? Story 16. A stray cat I fell in love with was taken too young, at just 9 months old, by a hit and run over a year ago. Story 17. To my partner's mom. She passed away when she was 8 years old, and I know she missed him very much. If I could change things, I wouldn't hesitate for a moment. Story 18. I will bring back the Florida man who lost a drunken fight to an alligator in a lake. There is a lot of potential for a Netflix series. Story 19. I would bring back my dad and pay for him to receive the best therapy and free him from the demons that prematurely took his life. Story 20. I would say Mr. Rogers is a terrific man. I think we all need him. Additionally, the president would dislike him. Story 21. I would let someone else choose. I feel fortunate in my life, I suppose. My parents are still alive and my family is generally healthy. I would likely just end up bringing back Chris Farley or someone similar. Story 22, Jesus again. I wanted to get his perspective on several matters that are either directly or indirectly associated with him. Story 23. My grandfather was my mentor, my guide, and a patient, strong man. He was the closest thing to a father I ever had. I cannot say enough positive things about him. He was the glue of my family, and our dynamic never fully recovered after his passing. Story 24. My mother suddenly died in her sleep at the age of 57 on August 27th last year, with no pre-existing conditions. I would have loved to see her grow old and be a grandmother to our expected firstborn, who is due to arrive in September. Story 25. My baby girl was stillborn but deserves a life. I never got to see her smile, hear her cry, learn, and grow. I never got to know who she is. Story 26. My son, I want to tell you I love you and hug you one more time. I miss you so much. Rest in peace, Jordan Clayton, December 28, 24. Story 27. Our son Wilson Billy Gordonhoff passed away 2 years ago today. He entered into a relationship with an older controlling woman. When he tried to leave, she harassed and yelled at him repeatedly until he took his own life. This incident was captured on video surveillance audio. He left behind 3 children and our family is forever devastated. He was wearing a tag that she bought him, claiming he was hers forever and would be her ride or die. We attempted to press charges, but with him being on antidepressants and her being the aggressor, it just didn't succeed. Billy, we love you and miss you beyond measure. What a senseless loss that has shattered us all. Story 28. My brother was my husband's and my best friend. It was not supposed to happen. We also lost our son-in-law who was 35. He had been in our lives since he was 13. This has crushed us. Story 29. Apart from my parents, my grandmother inspired my love of craft. She taught me to knit and sew. She would be amazed at my computerized embroidery machine. She made most of my clothes on a straight-stitch Singer machine and also taught me how to make her sponge cake. She passed away when I was 9. Story 30. For improving the world, either Jesus or Tesla. Personal vendetta. Reagan, so I can confront him once more. Story 31. Any one of my grandparents could be chosen, but if I had to pick one, it would be my grandfather on my dad's side. He and my grandmother lived in South Carolina for all my life, while I live in New York. I visited almost every summer, if not every other summer, for a week, but that wasn't much time. When he passed away, it was horrible, and I wish I had more time to spend with him. Story 32. My mother. I didn't realize how much of a staple she was to this family. When your mother is alive, you think of her as mom, not as someone who cares for you, nurtured you, guided you, and supported you. She was also your best friend. She went through so much. But for what? Sometimes I wish I had tried harder. I don't like thinking about her anymore. She's gone, and so are all the mistakes I made. Story 33. Definitely not Hitler. I'm glad he is dead. I would be scared I might come under the spell of his captivating eyes or something. I would bring back Norm Macdonald. I miss him. Story 34. That's tough. I love you, Mom. But my stepdad worked hard his entire life and never had any luck or rest. He died tragically. I'd like him to have a couple of years of peace to relax and enjoy himself. He deserved it. Story 35. Benedict Arnold was an American hero and a close friend of George Washington. I want to understand why he changed sides after everything he did for the Americans. I would like to hear his perspective. Story 36. Leonardo da Vinci, one of my idols, is not only to celebrate one of humanity's great geniuses, but also to fulfill his lifelong dream of flying. Story 37. My best friend, who died suddenly last month, and I had many things we wanted to do together. We always talked about going to Japan. If he were here, that's the first thing I would do, along with hugging him until my arms felt like they would fall off. Story 38. My great-aunt was the co-founder of shock trauma, known as the Golden Hour. She was an accomplished woman and the first nurse to ride in a medical evacuation helicopter. A pioneer in her field, I would bring her back so she could help out. Story 39. Probably Theodore Roosevelt. His life was absolutely fascinating, and I would love to learn more about his experiences. Story 40. If I can cure my dad's dementia, then I will. If he is a robot, then Carl Sagan. It would be great to see what he makes of the Webb telescope. Story 41. My father died when I was 5, and I would love to get to know him, although my entire family says I am like him, so maybe not. Story 42. In short order, any of these: Randy Rhoads, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, John Bonham, Freddie Mercury, Bon Scott, Neil Peart, Dimebag Darrell, Cliff Burton. The music we would have received from these artists today would be electric. Story 43. Have none of you ever read Edgar Allan Poe? That never works out the way you think. Honestly, it's always a huge trap and ends spectacularly. Story 44. My brother. Even though I know he is watching and still around in his own way, I would do anything to see him again. I want to get another hug so my sister-in-law and nephew can have their old lives back. He would be so surprised to see how much my nephew has grown. I know he is proud. Story 45. Hitler. I can't believe a person could hate a race so much that they would resort to violence after receiving answers. Story 46. I am not sure, but it could be someone important from the past who can positively influence politics today, such as George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. Story 47. My mom died at only 64 years old from complications related to high blood pressure and cholesterol. She wanted so much to be a grandmother but passed away when my oldest child, her first grandchild, was just barely 1 year old. She missed so much time with him because of COVID-19. She deserved more time to be a grandmother, and I really miss her. Story 48. My beloved big brother, David Garcia, was born on July 4, 1957, and died on December 8, 2006, at the age of 49. He was smart, funny, thoughtful, hardworking, good-looking, generous, protective, kind, and a typical pain like any big brother. I miss him dearly. Story 49. I miss my grandmother like crazy. She passed away 7 years ago on the 26th, and I still cry over her death sometimes. Story 50. Washington will surely roll harder in his grave once he discovers the circus that is the United States government. Story 51. If I could bring him back in perfect health, I would bring back my friend who passed away when he was 23. It has been 9 years, but I still think about him whenever I see a movie or listen to a song that I know he would love. Story 52. My dog passed away 2 years ago this March, and not a day goes by that I don't miss him. I can't wait to see you again, my good boy. Story 53. George Carlin. I would love to hear what he would have to say about all the issues that have been happening since 2008. Story 54. My wife's aunt was lost to either suicide or murder, and the case remains unsolved as the authorities have stopped caring. I never knew her, as she had passed away about a year before I met my wife. However, the way my wife speaks so highly of this woman and how sad it makes her to reminisce about her death and absence shows how much peace it would bring her. Story 55. Vladimir Lenin, so we could send him back to Russia to plunge the country into civil war again. It worked once, so why not again? Story 56. My dad. I swear if he were alive, my siblings and I would not have gone through the difficulties we experienced after his death. Story 57. My sister. I would bring her back clean and sober. Her children deserved a mother and the best version of her. My daughter never truly got to know her, but has felt the sadness of her loss her entire life. She died when my daughter was 4, and it affected the kind of mother I was. So much pain and sadness. Story 58. I would vote for Phil Hartman, an amazing comedian taken from the world too soon. While everyone speaks of their fathers, I understand that my dad chose to leave, and I wouldn't bring him back. He didn't want to be here anymore, but we loved comedy. Phil Hartman and a few others genuinely wanted to be here and make us all laugh. Story 59. My dad passed away last month, and I miss him. If you are feeling unwell, even if your symptoms resemble the side effects of your medication, especially if you have other health issues. Please consult a doctor as soon as possible. Story 60. The same answer every time this question is asked. My dog, Winnie. She has been gone for 15 years now, and I still miss her. Nobody loved me as much as she did. Story 61. My dad passed away when I was 12, and there are so many conversations I wish I had with him, learning about him and from him. I miss him even after 27 years. Story 62. My dad passed away last November from sudden heart failure. He just collapsed and that was it. I am 24 years old and regret every day that I did not text or call him since we had a very difficult relationship. Story 63. My dad, so I can confront him like he did to me when I was 4. I'd love to truly retaliate and laugh in his face as he expresses sorrow and pleads for mercy. Show him what being completely powerless feels like. It would bring me some peace and satisfaction after being mistreated every week for 13 years. Treat him exactly how he treated me while I make comments about what a coward he was, pretending to be a father. I might even confront him to the point of no return, but the scavengers might not even touch him. Story 64. My grandfather passed away when I was 6 years old. From what I have heard, I have inherited many of his traits, and I believe he would have been my best friend. Story 65. My grandma took care of me, loved me, and spoiled me. She cared for me more than my mother. I wish she were still here with me, and I would love her even more. Story 66. My cat was my best friend, and I wish we could have lived and died together. If I had to choose a human, it would be Lane Staley. He was a beautiful person who had a lot to offer the world and deserved a second chance to start over. Story 67. XXXTentacion had immense talent and the potential to be an excellent father, which I believe he would have been. Story 68. Eisenhower, so he can show this group of spoiled individuals what a true Republican patriot and statesman should be. Story 69. My childhood best friend Sarah died in a car accident at the age of 16, and there are so many moments I wish I could have shared with her, like prom and my wedding. I still find myself wanting to text her when something funny happens. Story 70. Jesus. It is fascinating to observe followers become upset when he disapproves of them. It may also be a good way to get his father to pay attention again. Story 71. 2 of my parents' pet rabbits have passed away, but I never saw them because they owned them before I was born. Additionally, I do not have anyone close to me who has died. Story 72. William Shakespeare. As an English teacher, I have many questions about his plays. What were his intentions behind them? Do we misunderstand his characters, particularly the women, because we read them through a modern lens? Did he dislike religion? Did he have negative feelings toward the royal family? So many questions. Story 73. My father died due to neglect. His mind was sharp and his body able, but my mother and brother let him down. I miss him so much. I live 6,000 miles away and didn't find out he had passed until a week later. Story 74. My dad was amazing. He died in 1996 when I was 15. He was a great man and an even better father. I can't think of any negative things he ever said or did. I loved him deeply and I miss him so much it hurts. Even now. Story 75. My grandma had a unique way of loving everyone with all her heart, regardless of whether they were a serial killer or an angel. She just loved. She was and always has been the only person in my life who has truly seen me as enough, validated me, and provided unconditional support. No one else has ever done this for me, and I'm around 40 years old. Story 76. My friend passed away while battling COVID-19 in the hospital. She left behind her newborn daughter and her husband, who is now alone with 2 children. I considered mentioning my grandfather, who would be in his mid-50s, but my grandmother is remarried now. I believe it would be best for the children to have their mother back. Story 77. My dad could be there for my little sister as she has her first baby. Our dad died of cancer in 2022. Story 78. My grandfather. My father would be very happy to see him, especially because I have a history test and I really need him to explain Chapter 7. Story 79. My grandparents. I miss them because they all passed away when I was very young. I hardly remember how happy I was with them during those days. I wish they could come back so I could be happy with them again. Story 80, My girlfriend. I haven't been the same since her passing. I would give everything to hold her again. Many people miss her deeply. Story 81, Robin Williams. I would love to see what he would say about the world right now during a new stand-up show. Story 82. My mother. There are so many things I want to share with her and apologize for. I miss her every day. Story 83. My younger brother was 19 years old and was murdered 3 days before his 20th birthday. I always felt like I would have much more time with him. I hadn't visited my family in about a year and a half. I had moved away from home, gotten married, and had a child. We spoke on the phone every day. I just didn't have the means to go back home and visit. My brother and I grew up in a challenging environment, and we bonded over that. I truly believed he would be here much longer, giving me a chance to see him again and for him to meet his nephew. Now I have 3 sons who will never get the chance to meet my best friend because someone took his life. Story 84. My niece's cousin was raped and killed at only 2 years old. It is heartbreaking. She was such a lovely girl who deserved a chance at life, love, and laughter. Story 85. There are 3 individuals who are equally significant to me. My paternal grandfather. I loved him dearly and miss him so much. He was probably the strongest man I knew, battling 3 different types of cancer without complaint. He simply wanted to walk on his property, admire the morning glories growing on his fence, and sip his coffee while watching the sunrise. His attitude towards his cancer was that it was just something that happened to him, like catching a cold. I still vividly remember the last time I spoke to him. He didn't recognize me anymore. There's no feeling quite like that. It cuts right to the core. My maternal grandmother. She was a warrior with fiery passion and boldness. I see a lot of her in my own personality, and my heart aches every time I think of her. We were close until her mind and memory began to deteriorate. I'm not sure if this counts, but my beloved dog Blue. He was my best friend, taken too young by cancer. He made life bearable during a very dark and stressful time. He gave me something to look forward to and was the only one in my life who loved me unconditionally. I constantly replay his death in my mind. A piece of me died with him that day. Story 86. My grandmother has motor neuron disease, and I feel selfish for wanting more time with her, so I could hug her one last time. She loved us all so much as we do her. Story 87. Probably someone's baby. I don't know who specifically, but I know a few mothers who have lost a baby. They are broken people. It would be a true gift to help them heal. Story 88. I would save it for when my wife passes away. In the more likely event that I die first, she can use it for me if she wishes. Story 89. I would say my dad, who passed away in 1999, but to be honest, I'm not sure I want to put him through all that the world has become. He would feel so lost with everything. I miss him every day, but in a way, it's okay with how it is. Story 90. My dad died in his late 50s about 4 years ago and is still deeply missed by everyone. He was the most positive, optimistic, and lively person you could ever meet. He could make anyone having a bad day laugh and feel better about themselves. I would give 10 years of my life for a 10-minute conversation with him. Rest in peace, Dad. We miss you. Story 91. Alexei Leho. I would place him in rehabilitation as soon as he returns. His suicide due to alcohol should have been prevented. Story 92. If it doesn't have to be a human, then my childhood dog. I had him from ages 3 to 17, and he was my rock in high school. I would not be living right now if it weren't for him. Story 93. Jesus. Just to see how that all plays out. Is he truly the Son of God? Or would meeting him shift everyone's perceptions? Additionally, being personally responsible for his second resurrection would look impressive on my resume. Story 94. Michael Jackson would have ended the bipartisan hate that is ruining the country and the COVID-19 pandemic somehow with 2 new anthems. Story 95. The little girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time had a challenging relationship with her father. Story 96. I really miss my grandpa. I lost him when I was about 8. He was the only adult who treated me like a kid, unlike other relatives. They called me too wise for my age, shared their belongings, and put the responsibility for their life decisions on me. Story 97. My grandpa passed away in September. I live abroad and couldn't be there. I just want to give him one more hug. Story 98. I lost a friend 2 years ago in a car accident. I've learned to live with it, but seeing his parents is heartbreaking. Story 99. One of my grandmothers died when my parents were young, so I think they would appreciate that. Story 100. Would it heal them of the affliction that caused their death? So then my mom. It has been 4 months, and she was only 66. Story 101. George Washington. Hearing his thoughts about the current state of the country and its leaders might help some people better understand the situation. Story 102. As a non-religious person, I would say that Jesus needs to return and guide those Christians. Story 103. One of my best friends had an epileptic seizure at night and passed away just 3 hours after we last spoke. I would give anything for her to have been here to meet my daughter. I cannot imagine anyone who would have loved her more than the little girl she never got to meet. Before her death, my partner and I often said, "We are not religious, but we like the idea of godparents." We always agreed she would have 2 godmothers, my best friend and her own. The day she died, we never spoke of it again. Story 104. My uncle was murdered, but it was made to look like a suicide. That was back in January 2012. Story 105. Let the dead rest. It's a gift to them and a pain to us. Why allow our selfishness to rob a loved one? Story 106. Tough call, but probably my therapist. He died 6 months after my year-long therapy ended. He was an amazing therapist, and I would have loved to show him how my life turned out in the end. He deserves a lot of credit for it. Story 107. My friends and family members probably had their faults, but you can't deny they knew how to bring people together. Story 108. My mother died when I was 4 months old. I truly believe that things would have been much better. Story 109. I will always say my mother. She passed away a year ago from a rare cancer and was the light of our lives. I have become that light in my family now, but the void will forever remain. She was my best friend and meant everything to us. I miss her every day and am still dealing with the trauma of her passing and witnessing it with my own eyes. Story 110. My dad passed away too early, and I am still suffering the consequences of an inheritance dispute because he did not have a will. Story 111. Thomas Jefferson aimed to explain to others the intentions of the Founding Fathers regarding the separation of church and state and modifications to the Constitution. Story 112. My father and I did not have a relationship beyond tension and resentment until I grew older. We tolerated one another. After he underwent double bypass surgery, he began experiencing significant cardiac issues. I know he was struggling emotionally. He was a simple man who believed that intimidation earned respect. I would love to hear his story, why he was the way he was, the pain he endured, and why he drank and cried during my childhood. Story 113. My brother has a wife and children left behind. My mother still cries when she visits his grave. Story 114. My first best friend died at 11. He should be 31 now. He was a good kid who should have had the chance to become a teenager and a young man. He should have experienced having girlfriends or boyfriends or getting married. He never had the opportunity to do the things he wanted, and I never got to grow up with him. He passed away before his life even had a chance to start, and that was unfair. If I could bring him back, it would be because he deserves to grow up too. I promised him I wouldn't forget him, and I didn't. He died a few weeks after we moved out of the apartment complex where we lived. He asked me if I would forget him, and I promised we would be friends forever. He fell out of his first treehouse. Story 115. My dad passed away in May at the age of 60. I miss him so much, and seeing my mom so heartbroken is incredibly difficult. Story 116. Sophie Scholl, voice of conscience for a Europe flirting with fascism and a United States that is succumbing to it. Story 117. Adrian Carton de Wyatt, Or the father of my neighbor behind us tragically took his own life along with his entire family using gas while everyone slept. I still wonder why he did it. However, Adrian Carton de Wyatt was a remarkable individual. Story 118. On a personal level, my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 4 and passed away when I was 9. I wish I could have her back to learn from her while growing up. Growing up without a mother or mother figure was difficult, especially since my father never dated or remarried. On a non-personal level, Princess Diana made the world a better place while she was in it. Story 119. My mom died when I was 10, and I feel like my life would have been easier if I had her guidance. She left behind 5 children before she turned 30, and it was tough being the eldest to set an example and act as a parent while my father worked constantly. I believe I could have been more successful in my adult life and pursued my dreams. Story 120. My grandma. Everyone I meet tells me I look exactly like her, and our personalities are similar. I didn't get to meet her because she had already passed away when I was born. Story 121. As much as I want to, no one. The deceased deserve their rest, and as much as I miss them, I will not violate their peace by bringing them back for my sake. If anything, I wish to meet them in the afterlife, not the opposite. Story 122. I loved my husband and he knew it along with many old friends, but I would choose my mother. I never thanked her for her love and the wonderful life she gave me. Just one day, one more hour. Story 123. My friend died by the tusk of a violent woolly mammoth, which I then defeated with my bare hands. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.